Right.
So is the symbol motion or destination?
Right.
I think we're talking about.
Right, so this is related to this.
As a standard.
But we put it down here, excuse me, Tina, so we put it down as a separate thing to talk about. We all know it's related.
Do you want me to do this?
New direction signs are interpreted as, direction signs interpreted as progression, or are they interpreted as destination, or are they interpreted as leaving a place? Is another. You know what I'm talking about? I know you're looking at me, but I'm asking because I know that there's nothing about leaving. That, but
peripheral transfers concept.
CPT. No.
Why are we using the word center?
Because it's the idea of center of gravity staying over the base of support. But we know it doesn't always do that because it can go in a direction.
Well, maybe
There's
central
a number
isn't
of
the right
different
word.
words. There's a number of words that are
Controlled.
used for this. I don't think that any one word makes everybody really happy.
What are the
So
possibilities?
other ways that I talk about this is a central fall or a controlled fall.
Controlled
then that
Or a dance
connotes
fall.
around.
Yeah.
Or a dance fall.
I don't think we want to advance control.
No.
That's part of the idea.
And dance fall I don't like either because there are a lot of uses for this beyond dance.
Exactly.
Do you slant the arrow that goes?
No.
I mean, like what you did was like going down, place low, and then you kind of slid out to side low.
That would
But,
be
you know, and what
That's
you
not-
demonstrated
It's a
right here.
symbol for a concept, so the
Right.
arrow's not.
And I don't understand why you don't have the idea of controlled, because you really are controlling the lowering.
Can you do a control fall without down flow?
Because control's associated with that.
waves breaking on the shore, Ted Sean.
Flow is free, but
Right.
you are not out of control. You are not falling in the true sense.
You're not out of control, right.
You're not-
So that's why I like the word
Could
controlled.
You can do it in slow motion, but you choose to do it with
Right,
free
but you're
flow.
still controlling the lowering, you're not falling.
At any point you could stop doing it, whereas in the
Yes, you
fall you
always have-
cannot.
I know, that's what I'm
So
saying, so
control.
why don't you like the word control?
Because it's used so often in the LMA community to mean something else. And I, for one,
Effort.
it's gonna,
It's an effort word for us.
Yeah.
Also, I also feel
we
like,
don't have to step on words.
but there, it also feels
Because
like
I don't
what
like
you're, what
central
you're
at all.
using
I don't
sometimes.
either.
No,
Well,
central's
find something
wrong.
else.
But what, it seems to me that what you're using there is the spatial pull that helps support you up as you go down. There's a counter tension, or there's really laying, I mean, earlier we were talking about the circus guy wires that hold up the town. I mean, you're using it, and that's in the example that Anne was demonstrating. You can have a really free-flowing rush, a quick rush into it. It has nothing to do with that kind of dynamic, but the holding up into the fall, the control of the fall, if
It's
you will,
tensegrity
is the
fall.
tensegrity.
It's a
There you go.
tensegrity fall.
Something.
Say that again?
What is tensegrity?
It's a tensegrity fall.
Yes, there you go.
T-E-N.
It's segrity,
S-E-G-R-I-T-Y.
It's a composite word of tensile integrity from
And what is
Mr. Fuller.
Yes.
And
Yes.
what does that mean?
T-E-N-E-S.
T-E-N-E.
S-E-G-R-I-T-Y.
And what does tensile mean?
Tensile implies that counter tension that Jan's just.
It's the power of the triangle, for instance, where the three sides hold each other up so that you don't have.
It's a sense of up
becomes
and
down and
counter
side
Or
and
a
side.
time like
so
this
the-
and you're against me.
Right, it's a counter tension.
So that as you go side and low into
Tensile, and what's the other one?
Integrity.
integrity.
And can you do
Tensile
this,
integrity.
From Mr. Fuller.
can you do this kind of a fall without tensileness? That's a,
If you
I
just
don't
sort
think
of,
so. That's what I
what
think
you've
you're
been,
trying
what
to
you've been
get.
describing and hunting for is
Is
always
gonna be,
tensegrity.
so if you cannot do it without this, then I think that sounds like a great word.
Tensegrity.
Tensegrity.
Fall.
E-F-N?
T-E-N-E-S, yes.
No.
It's from Buckminster Fuller, combination of tensile integrity.
I think it's just
I don't think the
T-E-N-S-E.
E is
Let me
there.
spell it.
It's
Yeah.
T-E-N-S-E, G-R-I-T-Y, integrity.
And would there be like a little nickname one could use so we could start, you could say it's that,
T-E-N-S-E, yes.
the tensile fall.
Tensile.
Tensile fall.
No.
Integrated fall.
Sounds too flashy.
Integrated or
Say the whole word,
something.
not all.
Like T-E-N.
Maybe what we want to do is get rid of the
No, I
word
think it's
fall.
just tense. Just tense.
Oh,
Tense,
that's right.
Tense, grit, E. Tense.
T-E-N-S-G-R-I.
G-R-I-T.
You don't think there's a
Tense
tense?
gritty.
A tense, gritty fall.
Yeah.
I'll look up on spell check, it's okay.
And T-E-N-S-E.
That sounds great.
Getting rid of the word fall, that sounds like an interesting idea.
Well, maybe that's what we need to do is for this idea, get rid of the word fall.
Yeah, because
Yeah.
that's,
It's a lowering,
yeah.
But it's
Or
What happens in a dance studio though,
language,
too,
you really
yeah.
get rid of it.
There's the practice.
You
I
say,
mean,
this
it's-
appears to be
yeah.
a fall,
It's-
but
it-
really it isn't. It's a tensegrity lowering.
Good
But-
idea.
no.
But what?
No.
It's a space harmony lowering is what it is. It's a whole lot of thing in a
But you're
nutshell.
No, it's not. I mean, yes, maybe it is in the law bond, but it's in everything else too.
Yeah.
I mean,
Integrity.
May I
Anne,
speak?
Jimmy Lee, then Anne.
Oh, I think what Eileen was getting at way back a little bit too is this idea of the body mechanics of how you're shifting your weight to a new support in a timely manner so that there's never any real impact on the next support. So when you're doing it with free flow, then this has to be done kind of fast. So there's a tempo-flow relationship in the way you do it. But there's still underlying body mechanics of how and you know this when you're teaching your students, exactly when is that moment that they have to shift to the new support. So it really isn't ever falling.
But it is also that risk of
I'm
having your
next.
center of weight.
That's right.
There still is a fall.
I wanted to point out the awful arguments I have had with dance people who say it is a true fall.
Yeah, I'm sure they
They're
do.
breaking the waves on it isn't, and they don't understand what a true fall is. So we have to consider, if we are dealing with dance people, we've got to cope with this understanding, and we were all brought up to call them falls. And it's only when you start getting into notation and analyzing that we discover this very important difference.
So what we are calling a true fall could be an off-balance fall.
Yeah.
So there are two kinds of
Yes.
falls, an
Yeah.
off-balance fall and a tensegrity fall.
That sounds great.
Still doesn't.
But nobody's going to know what we mean by a tensegrity fall.
We explain it,
Why
they're
not?
not gonna know why.
You have to teach them.
Well, that's the same argument I could use for not using the word fall.
Yeah, they know.
Let's get back to
I
our,
like that the symbols are unified though, and whatever name we end up for it. I think that's not as important as the fact that our categories of movement and how we represent them have some coherence.
Exactly.
so if I could just summarize as far as the mapping part of this goes.
Yeah, let's see that.
We seem to be in agreement for the concept of balance. For this concept, for the concept of falling off balance, tensegrity fall, lowering to the ground, whatever we're going to call it. We're not in agreement symbolically, or at least we're not in agreement and we're not happy with what we've got.
For the truth, what we've now tentatively labeled true fall.
True fall.
Well, we
Well,
certainly have
True fall
understood the
generic.
aspects of the problem.
yes, but we're not happy with the symbology and we're not in agreement with the symbology.
For what?
For a true fall.
No, I think we're in agreement, we're not happy with it.
No, we're not in agreement. Some people are using this.
Oh,
Some
right.
people are using this.
You're right, you're right, you're right, you're right.
Okay, so as far as the mapping goes, let's move on to our next thing on the page, which is destination.
Can I have a bathroom
But you know what?
break?
Let's take a break, a bathroom break, before we move on to the next topic.
Brilliant. So excited about it.
Where do I stop this?
There, it's on.
Okay, before we get started, I just wanted to kind of get a consensus with the group. We're having some fantastic discussions, but we aren't sticking to task. So I wanted to find out from you, this is a smaller group, if you wanted to kind of forget about our task for today and allow ourselves to continue these kinds of discussions, or if you wanted to keep to task and try and work some more on the mapping while we've got some people whose viewpoints we don't often get a chance to hear from. You know, Sheila from OSU isn't always here, and Ann we can't always have here, so if we want to press forward on the mapping while we've got their viewpoints, or if we want to have the discussions while we've got their viewpoints.
And it doesn't matter, really.
Well, why can't we match, and then if we have time,
Great,
go back with it.
okay, that would be good. All right, so the next thing we wanted to go to was the motion toward.
Oh, no, I thought you said destination.
I'm sorry, you're right, I missed destination, you are right.
This is number 45.
Going back to Eileen's, idea of generic, because this ad lib is
46.
just all over the place.
46.
Okay.
I'm sorry?
Oh, I see.
Sheila, I'm sorry, what did you say?
I'm just, back to your concept of generic, that this any and the ad lib sign are just everywhere, and that it might help to separate those concepts.
What? Like Ray wrote
But
it
again,
out.
before we have that discussion.
No, it's not.
Before we have that discussion, look at this symbology here. Is this the sign that you are using for destination?
A general indication for destination.
No.
Okay?
Action stroke and the little sign without
Can you,
the ad lib.
can you?
Yeah.
This, we don't use the ad lib.
So what are you connecting to?
Whatever might be the destination, it might be a place in space, it might be, for
So you
instance.
just kind of leave it blank instead of filling it with an ad.
Right.
Right,
Cool.
yeah,
Right.
yeah. And I tend to call
With
it,
the perception that
I tend to
the
call it
ad lib.
arrive at.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, I do too.
Okay.
So if you were writing in a sequence, you'd do that. Now follow that with a forward sign.
Well, that to me, forward is still a motion.
I would tend to say something like, arrive at this corner of the room.
Or arrive at another person, or.
You could say, well, we have used it for arrive at something forward. You could use it that way. I mean, if you really.
My
But
problem
again, but
is-
before we get into the theory discussion,
What is it
let's
that you
first
do?
get our map made here.
Okay.
And then we can get into the theory discussion. Is there, for the idea of destination, is there anything else that anybody is using?
Are you using the same as Jackie?
For the idea of, for these symbols, some people are calling it arrive at, some people are calling it destination. Is there anything else that anybody's calling it? Okay, then I'm going to put up here the idea of destination. We have different symbols with the same meaning.
Or arriving.
And wait. And for these symbols, we have different terms that we're using.
Arriving.
Arriving.
Yeah.
Arriving.
And which one is that, Charlotte?
So
Surprises
Which
me,
one?
Charlotte, because that seems like a more kind of process-oriented, ongoing kind of word as opposed to a destination also.
Exactly.
Yeah.
True.
True.
Yeah.
That's the idea, so.
But see, that's,
That's where I would get at, you know, I don't have this in the right spot, but that's where I would, instead of being an action stroke, take that way.
Or would you want to travel in? Because your destination is a part of the road.
right, yeah. But, yeah, I would keep that pretty, so forward, middle, arriving at that side, and then could use travel.
And after having tried to keep you on mapping and not clearing, I just have to say this. It's not anything I'm using or doing, but the idea of destination to me has the concept of traveling and arriving somewhere, and the idea that the action stroke is used rather than something that says traveling or path or something is surprising to me.
I do some
I don't
movement.
think so, because you could arrive at a state like, you know,
Yeah.
forwardness or bentness or,
Turning.
yeah, arrive at.
I turn and, go
Well,
ahead, you say.
turn is a motion, we won't go into that. But a state of flexion, contraction, it is a destination. So you arrive at this stage, that state, or that stage. So it can be a state in the body, not just a
And
point
what
in
if,
the
and what
brain.
about Jackie's example where you arrived at a place in the room? Do you still use this kind of an idea for that?
If I may, a little history. This whole idea of destination came from Knust's indication of pathways with the aim. He called it the aim, and at the end you gave what the aim is, and that is to arrive at this point or at your partner or whatever. So that is where it came from.
Right. That I understand. But my question was, would you, Jackie has said that she would do, I can put this back to what it was. That. Would you write it that way, or would you do it as a path to there?
That would be a very open statement. Presumably, you would turn the action stroke into a path, because if you're going to go to another part of the room, how are you going to get there?
Right.
I turn my head to look there.
The action is turning then.
I'm
so
turning
there
to
is
look
this
at
one.
the, I know.
So if you saw this, would you think that you could equally turn your head and look there, or go there, or?
I would say any movement that finishes at, in
So
that
turning
thing.
your head doesn't.
In other words, it's as opposed to moving, the perception, the feeling of moving away or moving toward, I am doing a movement that ends up. And so it could be any movement that is possible to do. It could be a turn, it could be a traveling, it could be a,
Does it have
Address
to
it maybe a better statement.
Does it have to be a spatial location or
could be any
organization, or could it be a quality?
Yeah.
That's what, yeah, that's like.
Oh, you mean, do I do a little
Well,
that ends up
this is a configuration, not a quality. Yeah.
I know, but it's,
As opposed, when you
Yeah.
say quality, you're talking about.
I'm talking about something that we would call effort quality or dynamics.
I do a movement that ends up carved.
Yeah, so you could say it ends in a certain
It's
shape.
spatial too.
I would have
That's made in a shape.
So, because Anne was talking, her example of flexion was also about body part configuration, which is a spatial idea. And this implies the space, so is arriving always got to do with space somehow?
The movement that ends up touching that space or that ends up
Yeah.
relating.
Seems to always
I really
relate
can't
to
tell you what
something
that
out
call
there.
them.
Different symbols, same
One way or the
meaning.
other.
Because it's the same symbol that we're talking about, but there's different ways of talking about different.
I'm not
ways of
sure,
defining-
because I could
defining
arrive
it.
at my hands on my waist,
Still right.
and that's,
But is
I
that
wouldn't think that was
location?
spatial.
It's a body configuration, it can be described spatially,
An aim.
even though you don't think of it that
It's
way.
arriving at an aim. Achieve.
Relationship.
Okay. Sorry, I took you where I said, where we all decided we weren't going to go.
And we liked it.
But the next one we wanted to look at was motion toward.
Number 47.
Again, I don't use the ad libs.
How would, and I was allowed to say how would,
Oh, yeah, I don't either, actually. Use the ad lib in it when I show, this is motion approaching. Actually, I call it approaching truth.
so
As
if you
opposed to
use
motion
a
towards.
plane moving away, doesn't that confuse, isn't that confusing, because it can also mean
It doesn't
disappear?
say from what? Well, I
Whatever,
would say
if
that was
it's
a
blank.
context.
If it's a blank, if you say that you can have a plane approach, then presumably you can have a plane
Yes.
Moving away.
moving away, you know what I mean?
Yes.
And then that would mean, if I do something like
You need to write on the board so you can see your paper.
Thank you.
Disappear.
The other word I use for that besides motion toward becoming.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
For that or that without the ad lib?
Without the ad lib, excuse me.
Okay, if I say this,
Right.
does this have a different meaning than this would? Let's see. My brain is not.
Put your turn sign inside the, going away from sign, and then I can answer that in one way.
Why
But
don't
that's
you
not
make
the only
it
way.
a twist instead of a turn?
Okay.
Because for me, when I teach motif, and I'm not the expert, I must say, I would call the first one of those as two separate actions with an unspecified going away
This.
from.
Charlotte, could you move back or I
I'm
can't
sorry.
see what you've written?
And then I would call the one inside the bow as go away from that twist.
But
So I
then,
wouldn't assume that can you number them?
I think it'd be easier, Charlotte, if you had a twist one way or the other, rather than,
because of the confusion, I thought, I just realized
so
something.
that there's something
Right.
definite to go away from.
Maybe it would be better if I even just put a flex in there.
So, yeah, so
Oh.
number 3, for me, that would be two separate actions. Whereas
I'm
number
gonna
4
change
would
this.
be
There we go.
go away from the
Twisted straight.
stand state.
Yeah.
Oh, that'll cause other problems. Sorry.
So 3 would have been, you would have been twisted, and then you go away from being twisted.
Or I don't have a specified what I
You
go away
cancel
from.
it. It would be a cancellation.
If I was on a lobby notation score, it'd be a cancellation. If I was in motif, I would think it was two separate actions.
And what's the second one? You're getting away.
Well, I'd have my choice of, like, maybe I twisted and then
Is there
all the
a
way from
difference?
you, I don't
Go
know.
away from something.
Yeah,
Is there
I go
a-
away from, I don't know what.
Is there a difference between 3 and 5?
I would say 3
It sounds
was
to me as though, sorry.
the
5
spelling
is
out
what
of
you
5.
were- What you were feeling.
Or 5 is a spelling.
She's understanding of
That's it.
3.
Sorry.
It would be, for me,
Times.
something. I like to have something stated.
I would.
So if we look back at our mapping for a moment, the idea of motion toward, we have different symbols, either with the ad lib or without the ad lib. And I'm not clear whether this needs both of those choices, also needs the ad lib, but the idea of this concept, we have different terminologies, motion toward, approaching, becoming. And I'm not sure if that's also true of this one, if I need both symbols there.
And then there's one
And
more.
also
The idea of
increasing.
increasing, decreasing,
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
which is like a way of dealing with.
Because the
And then one more question about whether it's a cancellation or a separate action.
Right. And there's one other word, the word progression, which is sometimes used. I wouldn't, but it's there.
Can you add the idea of cancellation or separate action
It disappears.
to the V sign,
Upside down.
or upside down V?
Yeah, we need the upside down V.
So I'm not clear if these are the same or different. Is that,
That's the question. That is the question,
Sheila
okay.
thinks that they are the same, right?
no, I think 3 and 4, I think 3 and 5 may,
Are the,
could be the
could be
same,
the same.
but I think 3 and 4 could be different. And if I saw 3 on a lava notation staff, I would think it was like 4. But I wouldn't necessarily think that if I saw it in a motif score.
Although I think if I saw it in a motif, I would probably think for simply because I would expect to have in the motif something in that be like the headlip or like a partner or
Yeah.
a chair or whatever
Yeah.
you were leaving from.
On the other hand,
I would kind of assume that it was related to the
Didn't you
choice.
just say that you would use the plain sign without anything in it?
Right, but I would mean it to be like for them. I would mean it to be the going away, the decreasing of the
But
choice.
the, I
What you
thought,
had before.
yeah, see,
Without anything in it, I think.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to step on that. But my understanding in motif is that the validity rules are that something doesn't necessarily stay. That you just go on to the, whatever the next thing is. So that's the reason I would assume 3.
Right.
With 2
Except in
separate
this-
actions.
right,
I mean,
except
clear in 4,
Except in
and clear in
this,
5.
right, except in this case, I feel like that's part of how, certainly in the motif, we use it as this kind of cancellation or this increasing, decreasing with the thing that's before it
Uh-huh.
or after, depending. But, and that if you really look, if you're talking about it in the motif sense with it having to do with moving towards or away, or then you would have something in there that, of what you were talking
Yeah.
about, like the
Good.
side of the
That I
room
would
or the
understand.
So isn't-
partner or the,
Yeah.
whatever thing it was would be in there.
Yeah.
And I would probably put something like 5, an ad lib or something in there if you did want it to be completely separate, but because it's attacked, in a sense, following them.
So if you're going to say that for this set of symbols, since it's a family of symbols, wouldn't it then follow that when you're saying destination, you'd want to keep it compatible with this
Yeah.
way of thinking, that you would want to have the ad lib sign?
Something in there.
Yeah, that's what I'm
For the
saying.
destination.
Exactly. That's
I
what
wanted
makes
to
it
say
become-
that it's a type of verb that requires a point of reference. And we have categories of symbols that are like that. But there still remains the question, if the point of reference isn't stated, even as an ad lib, what do we assume to be point of reference? It's kind of,
Well, and that's like the other one with the action language. Oh,
That's what I'm saying.
that it is,
right.
it assumes that something fills that, but it, to have to state that ad lib sign, I guess
Yeah.
that's what I think is tricky, is always having to state that, instead of just leaving a gap where something would be.
But it is confusing about, we so often presume that it was the thing that went before that is going to be that point of reference in relation to that symbol. So I think that still remains as
Yeah,
a
I
question.
mean, that's been like a.
Julie, if we did a little, Jackie, maybe you could do, tie, number 3, tie these symbols together with a little vertical bow.
Okay.
Would have to put it together.
There. Now you've linked.
Oh, yeah. I think
We
there's
have to,
always ways to specify
Yeah.
things. But the question is, do you always have to use that ad lib or whatever
yeah.
we're going to decide is the symbol for generic? Do you always have to use that?
If you're going to be in a situation where you're going to be communicating, and the thing can be confused, it can be read in more than one way. And we want to create a